A hush fell over the chamber, as every delegate stared at the human kneeling before them. His suit was rumpled, his glasses cracked, and a bruise blossomed on his cheek, a perfect symbol of Earth's pathetic place in this galaxy, or so they thought. But as the Speaker of the Galactic Council leaned forward, sneering and preparing to deliver a final insult that would echo across 100 star systems, the human calmly adjusted his cufflink and whispered into it, just loud enough for the speaker to hear. The words sent a chill through the air. Initiate planetary lockdown, asset extraction in progress. A heartbeat later, every screen in the chamber flickered and froze, displaying classified images from their own governments, their fleets, their personal vaults. Then came a final, chilling image, Jonas Hale's grinning face, already seated in the council vault control room. The laughter that had filled the chamber moments before died in an instant, replaced by a collective, choking silence. From this instant, the Council would no longer laugh at Earth. Hours earlier, Earth's official delegation had arrived with all the pomp their battered diplomatic shuttle could manage. The polished brass emblems on their jackets gleamed proudly, even though they came from a world with outdated ships and no real standing army. They strode in politely, smiling with a touch too much optimism for a group about to be devoured by galactic politics. The chamber itself was a coliseum of arrogance, built to make even confident species feel small. Tall, arched pillars formed the shape of a vast amphitheater where delegates from every corner of known space lounged in ornate seats, wrapped in the comfort of their political superiority. And above them, the speaker, a reptilian giant with eyes like twin daggers, waited to crush Earth's hopes underfoot. The laughter began before Earth's chief diplomat could speak. It wasn't even subtle, a snorting chortle from the Plaxa ambassador, a wheezing giggle from the multi-eyed Ulthari, and outright howls from the scarred Dominion's brutish envoy. When the human diplomat nervously cleared his throat and began reading Earth's modest request for a trade partnership, the chamber erupted into full mockery. The speaker himself banged his staff once, silencing them just enough to deliver his verdict. Earth, he declared, was not worthy of consideration. They lacked the ships, the soldiers, and even the respect to stand before the council. But Jonas Hale was not standing with them. He was watching from a high balcony, dressed not in diplomatic robes but in a nondescript gray tunic that disguised the fact that every part of it concealed weapons, tools, and neural disruptors. The bruised, rumpled human on the floor had been the bait. Jonas was the real envoy, an emissary trained in the cold shadows of covert operations. His job was not to plead. His job was to ensure that by the end of this session, no one in this chamber would ever again underestimate Earth. As Earth's diplomats were led away under the sneering gaze of the assembled powers, Jonas moved. His steps were quiet but measured, weaving effortlessly through the back corridors of the vast council complex. Every guard he passed never noticed him. His disguise tech projected a harmless bureaucratic face, a technique perfected on Earth during countless deniable operations. Inside his cuff, his fingers moved with precision, activating the first phase of Operation Diplomat. In the control room deep beneath the council chambers, a junior technician blinked in confusion as entire sectors of the security grid suddenly went offline. The technician hesitated, unsure whether to report this anomaly, and that hesitation cost the council dearly. Jonas was already slipping past the final biometric scanner, aided by a device on his wrist that spoofed retinal patterns from the speaker himself. Back in the chamber, the delegates reveled in Earth's humiliation, sharing jokes about backward planets and the absurdity of allowing such a species into the halls of power. They did not notice that a strange flicker was beginning to dance across the towering screens surrounding them. But then the flicker resolved into something they could not laugh at, an image from the secure hangars showing their own ships being targeted by invisible drones. Another image followed, private transmissions between council members detailing bribery, illicit deals, and betrayals. And then came the worst one of all, a live feed from their supposedly impregnable data vault, where Jonas Hale now sat casually in the speaker's chair, feet on the table, smiling at the camera. Panic spread like wildfire. Delegates scrambled from their seats, yelling orders into wrist communicators that no longer worked. The speaker's voice rose above the chaos, shouting commands that went ignored as guards rushed into the chamber only to halt, confused and terrified. Earth's official delegation was nowhere in sight. Jonas had already arranged their extraction before revealing himself. Jonas spoke directly into the Council's broadcast system, his voice calm and almost amused. He introduced himself as Earth's special envoy, and apologized for the inconvenience, explaining that Earth's diplomats had sadly failed to achieve their objectives, and that therefore, he had taken it upon himself to ensure Earth's interests were properly represented. The phrase proper representation carried such chilling weight that even the scarred Dominion's warlord visibly recoiled. Amidst the pandemonium, Jonas began listing names, council members whose crimes would now be broadcast to the entire galaxy. For each name, he revealed damning evidence, releasing a wave of scandal that would topple governments. He ended with a polite but unmistakable warning: Earth would be willing to negotiate again soon, and next time, the Council would listen carefully. When he finally deactivated the feed, Jonas leaned back in the speaker's chair and let out a quiet chuckle. The Galactic Council's laughter had died forever. In its place was fear, respect, and a new understanding. Earth's diplomat was not a man who carried treaties. He carried leverage, intelligence, and the ruthlessness of someone who had never expected fairness in the first place. Somewhere, far below the chamber where their petty jokes had begun, Jonas already prepared for his next step, ensuring that Earth would not merely join the Galactic Council, but would one day run it. The game had only just begun, and this time, Earth's envoy would play by Earth's rules. Jonas sat in the shadows of a council maintenance tunnel, the soft glow from his wrist console illuminating his face as he reviewed the unfolding chaos above. Delegates ran in circles, guards clashed with each other in confusion, and alarms wailed without pattern as system after system failed. The virus he had planted was far more than a simple sabotage tool. It was a masterpiece of psychological warfare. Where normal infiltration aimed for clean control, Jonas's plan was messy by design, seeding distrust and paranoia even before the first shot was fired. This was not war by brute force. It was manipulation on a scale that would leave every species questioning their own intelligence networks and protocols. He smiled grimly as another security node fell under his command, opening all secure communications to him. But now came the critical part. Chaos alone would not secure Earth's future. To truly bring the Council to its knees, he had to strike at the one thing that kept them united, their illusion of mutual trust. He initiated Phase 2 without hesitation, deploying forged intelligence packets that framed key Council members for crimes they had not yet committed but might have considered in secret moments. Above, the scarred Dominion envoy, a towering brute clad in battle armor, barked at his aides to track down the source of the security collapse. At the same time, the delicate insective Rextii ambassador frantically accused her longtime rival from the Thalan consortium of conspiring with Earth. The chamber that only hours ago had mocked Jonas's people was now a theater of betrayal and fear. Jonas exploited every cultural fault line, whispering suggestions through intercepted communications, directing blame subtly but precisely. His careful tampering ensured that old tensions reignited instantly. The Scar Dominion began deploying armed guards near the Rextii delegation, while the Ulthurai broadcast a warning to their homeworld that a galactic coup might be underway. Jonas knew that once seeds of distrust were planted, even the most advanced species would water them with suspicion and ego. Meanwhile, Earth's formal diplomatic delegation was safely away, spirited out through a hidden maintenance shaft disguised as part of the fire suppression system. The diplomat who had stood trembling before the speaker earlier was now seated comfortably aboard an unmarked freighter already departing the system. He did not even know the full extent of Jonas's plan. His role had been to fail publicly and spectacularly. It had worked perfectly. The spectacle of humiliation had lowered the guard of every delegate in the room, convincing them that Earth was weak and foolish. Now their own arrogance was Jonas's greatest weapon. Jonas navigated deeper into the Council's infrastructure, accessing restricted areas that no human was ever meant to see. The air was cold and dry, humming with the power of 1,000 servers processing the data of 100 worlds. Here, he reached his true target, the Council's master archive, a repository of treaties, secrets, blackmail, and intelligence stretching back centuries. No military victory could equal the leverage contained in this room. He worked quickly, interfacing a device that siphoned data at blistering speeds while simultaneously uploading subtle alterations to critical records. Entire histories were being rewritten in real time, alliances corrupted, and trust eroded at its root. Back in the council chamber, tensions reached their boiling point. A scarred Dominion officer drew a sidearm and leveled it at the Thalan delegate, shouting about betrayal and espionage. Guards from multiple factions rushed forward, weapons drawn, only to freeze when the central holographic projector activated without warning. The giant image that filled the room was not of Jonas himself but of a heavily classified scarred Dominion war plan, exposing in vivid detail their long-concealed intention to conquer a neutral system, a system represented in the council by several highly offended delegates. Outrage boiled over into chaos. Shouts became accusations, accusations became threats, and threats quickly became skirmishes as guards and aides clashed. Jonas observed it all from a secure surveillance node, carefully timing each reveal to maximize panic. With the council now fully engulfed in internal crisis, Jonas prepared the next twist. Through carefully falsified diplomatic channels, he began quiet communications with rival factions, presenting himself as a rogue human willing to sell even more intelligence to those who offered favorable terms for Earth. Every faction took the bait, eager to outmaneuver each other and secure what they believed would be exclusive access to Earth's secrets. Jonas's messages were simple but devastating: confidential files, falsified documents implicating rivals and assassination plots, hidden recordings suggesting secret cabals. Within hours, Earth transformed from a ridiculed backwater into the most sought-after potential ally in the galaxy, simply because Jonas had turned the Council's own paranoia against itself. Despite his calm exterior, Jonas knew this was the most dangerous part of the plan. If even one faction realized they were being manipulated, the illusion would shatter. He moved with ruthless efficiency, ensuring no faction learned what the others were receiving, playing them all off against one another like pieces on a chessboard. For every offer sent to the Scar Dominion, a contradictory promise was made to the Vrextii. For every fabricated scandal leaked to the Ultheri, a corresponding lie was delivered to the Thalan Consortium. The council chamber became a powder keg, each delegate sitting atop a mountain of false intelligence that convinced them war was imminent if they did not act first. In this environment of distrust and deception, Jonas planted one final psychological weapon, a rumor, subtle and unverifiable, that Earth had developed a technology capable of remotely assassinating council leaders anywhere in the galaxy. This simple idea, seated in a single intercepted conversation and echoed back to key delegates, took root instantly. The delegates who had laughed at Earth's diplomats just hours before now sat in silence, eyes darting nervously toward shadows, fingers hovering over panic buttons. Some quietly ordered their personal guards to remain closer than ever before. Others demanded that their starships prepare immediate evacuation protocols. The myth of Earth's weakness had crumbled completely. In its place stood a terrifying uncertainty. What if Earth had indeed leapt ahead in ways the Council had failed to predict? What if Jonas Hale, that unassuming figure in a grey tunic, was not merely a spy but the herald of a new power capable of striking them down without warning? Jonas moved through the labyrinthine lower levels of the Council complex with deliberate calm, though above him panic gripped every delegate. The upper chamber that once radiated power and confidence was now a cauldron of shouting, suspicion, and sudden accusations. Council members who had long sworn mutual protection treaties now sat under armed guard, surrounded by aides who themselves were unsure whom to trust. As Jonas reached an unmarked security door, he paused for a moment to listen to the frantic transmissions bleeding through the corrupted council network. Delegates were demanding answers from their intelligence chiefs, officers were deploying personal troops inside the council grounds, and emergency evacuation orders were being prepared for entire delegations. The utter chaos unfolding was not a coincidence. It was precisely how Jonas had planned it. He keyed a command into his wrist console, activating Phase 3 of his operation. The rumors of Earth's technological advancement had done their work, but now he needed to tighten the web. It was time for the unseen manipulator to step from shadow into myth. Quietly and invisibly, He deployed a series of holographic projections throughout the complex, engineered to flicker briefly in peripheral vision and vanish. They displayed a lone human figure cloaked in shadow, always watching, always near. To a panicked mind already primed to fear an Earth assassin among them, it was devastatingly effective. The council delegates began ordering guards to sweep entire hallways and chambers for this phantom presence that did not exist, wasting precious time and resources while Jonas moved freely right under their noses. The Otharianvu, a bloated creature with translucent skin and too many eyes, snapped at its aides to uncover the truth about the supposed human infiltrator. It ordered double layers of guards and biometric security around its personal quarters. In a gesture of paranoid defiance, it accused the Vrextii delegation of harboring an Earth assassin. The Vrextii responded by sealing themselves behind force fields and issuing an official complaint accusing the Ulthari of espionage. Within hours, long-standing alliances were disintegrating into a tangle of accusations and counter-accusations. Jonas knew that no amount of real diplomacy could have engineered such fractures. Only fear could. He sent a coded message through a hacked diplomatic channel, this time addressed specifically to the Scar Dominion, suggesting that Earth had already secured an exclusive military alliance with the Vrextii and the Thalan Consortium, backed by terrifying new technology. Enraged and panicked, the Scar Dominion's warlord ordered his personal fleet to assume combat posture near the Council's primary orbital station, triggering a cascade of similar mobilizations from rival factions. What had been a stable if arrogant body of galactic governance only a day ago was now a powder keg primed for war, all because a single man in a gray tunic moved quietly through their most sacred halls. Jonas was careful not to reveal too much too soon. His strategy was simple but devastatingly effective: offer small pieces of believable disinformation to key individuals, each one designed to confirm their darkest suspicions about their rivals. He understood that fear is self-sustaining when it seems justified. Once he sowed a seed of doubt, the delegates themselves did the rest, interpreting every glance, every hesitation, every order through a lens of paranoia. The council chamber itself became almost a parody of its former dignity, filled with increasingly frantic delegates shouting over one another, all desperate to control a situation none of them understood. In the midst of this chaos, Jonas slipped into the council's intelligence analysis center, a secure facility deep beneath the chamber, from where analysts usually monitored threats to the council worlds. They were gone now, evacuated in the panic, leaving their systems exposed. Jonas accessed their feeds, subtly manipulating the threat assessments. Official reports now suggested that Earth had launched a shadow fleet, equipped with cloaking technology and assassins capable of infiltrating any security perimeter. He planted hints and intercepted communications that an Earth-led coup was already underway, supported by factions inside the Council itself. In a masterstroke of psychological manipulation, Jonas crafted falsified recordings of supposedly intercepted private meetings between rival delegates, each one implying a betrayal, a conspiracy, a secret deal to abandon Council unity and cut a separate peace with Earth. He fed these recordings back into the communications channels he controlled, ensuring they reached the intended targets. Predictably, outrage erupted anew. Factions that had cooperated for centuries turned on one another overnight, their trust completely undermined. Then came a critical moment. A delegate from the Scar Dominion, bristling with rage and arrogance, attempted to confront Jonas directly. Somehow, through all the chaos, this delegate had discovered Jonas's presence and tracked his movements to a maintenance access corridor. With a squad of heavily armed guards, the delegate burst into the corridor where Jonas waited calmly. The delegate, towering over Jonas and brandishing a plasma spear, declared loudly that Earth's envoy would be captured and displayed as proof of Scar Dominion's superiority. Jonas did not run, did not even flinch. Instead, he stepped forward, eyes cold, and disarmed the Scar warrior in a single, fluid motion using nothing more than a utility wrench and his environment. The guards hesitated, confused and unnerved by the speed and precision of Jonas's counterattack. Without a word, Jonas walked past them, leaving the Scar warlord unconscious on the ground, humiliated before his own soldiers. Word of this encounter spread quickly through the panicked delegates. The image of a human Black Ops agent coolly defeating one of the Council's most feared warriors without breaking a sweat only added fuel to the legend Jonas was crafting. Now every delegate not only feared Earth's supposed technological leap but also its agent's personal lethality. Jonas understood that perception mattered more than reality. The Council's fear had reached a tipping point where it no longer mattered what was true or false. The myth had taken hold, and reality was being rewritten in its image. Jonas waited until the fear he had so carefully cultivated reached its peak before making his next move. He stood at the edge of the central data core, a colossal chamber filled with humming servers and cold blue light reflecting off the polished floors, the heart of the Galactic Council's power and secrets. The delegates did not know that while they sat quarreling in their grand chamber, Jonas had already seized control of every data feed, security camera, and encrypted archive they possessed. The entire Galactic Council complex was effectively blind to its own vulnerabilities while Jonas watched every move, every whisper, every panic-stricken expression. He moved without hurry, setting the next phase into motion. In moments, the entire galaxy would know that Earth was not the weak world the Council thought it was, but a predator in disguise, ready to bite when mocked. He slipped through an access door that led to the private broadcast control room, a place from which the speaker himself addressed the galaxy on rare ceremonial occasions. With a flick of his wrist console, Jonas locked every entrance, overriding the biometric security with codes he had stolen earlier in the day. The two engineers inside barely had time to register his presence before they were gently stunned with a device designed to leave no mark and no memory. Jonas sat at the console and began uploading the most dangerous content in the galaxy, a carefully selected trove of the Council's most corrupt, scandalous, and damning secrets. He worked quickly and efficiently, fingers moving with precision as if he had done this 1,000 times before, because in truth he had, just never on this scale. While the Council above descended into chaos, their allies across the galaxy were about to witness revelations that would tear apart alliances, bankrupt dynasties, and topple governments. Jonas smiled without warmth as the upload completed. He activated the Council's emergency broadcast override and for the first time in history, every major galactic news channel and communication feed was seized by a single message. The image that appeared was not the speaker's polished and imposing face but Jonas himself, seated casually in the speaker's ornate chair, one leg draped over an armrest, staring directly into the camera with a calm confidence that chilled the blood of every delegate watching. He spoke softly, almost politely, yet every word was a dagger. He introduced himself as Earth's special diplomatic envoy and apologized for bypassing normal channels, explaining that recent difficulties at the Council necessitated a more direct approach. Then, with the press of a button, he began to release the Council's secrets one by one. For every delegate who had sneered at Earth, there was now a scandalous revelation flashing across the galaxy. Secret deals with pirate syndicates, hidden bribes from criminal cartels, genocidal plans kept hidden from their own citizens, even illicit personal scandals designed to destroy reputations. In the space of minutes, the carefully constructed illusion of Council integrity shattered like glass under a hammer. Inside the chamber, delegates who moments before had shouted threats now sat stunned, pale, their political lives collapsing in front of them as entire star systems learned of their crimes in real time. The speaker tried to rise from his seat, shouting orders at his guards to cut the broadcast, but nothing happened. His command consoles were dead. His guards stood frozen, unsure whether their loyalty would doom them next. Some delegates fled the chamber in panic, racing toward private shuttles, hoping to escape before their worlds descended into revolt. Jonas watched it all unfold from his chair as if observing a theater production, knowing every line of the script because he had written it himself. The humiliation was total. Where once Earth had been laughed at as weak and irrelevant, it now sat in a position of terrifying power, holding the Council's most dangerous secrets, and broadcasting them without mercy. The entire galaxy was watching, and in that moment, Earth transformed from a footnote in galactic history to its most unpredictable force. But Jonas was not finished. As his final act, he projected an ultimatum across every screen. He declared that Earth was prepared to engage in proper diplomatic relations after this regrettable misunderstanding, but that from this day forward, Earth would expect respect, fairness, and partnership as equals. And then he delivered the line that would be quoted for generations: from this day forward, Earth's diplomats will negotiate from a position of absolute clarity. Every delegate in the chamber understood that clarity meant blackmail, leverage, and the threat of exposure at any moment. Jonas ended the broadcast with a simple smile, cutting the feed just as the speaker collapsed into his chair, defeated, broken, and humiliated. The chamber was silent, the kind of silence that only comes after disaster. Delegates whispered among themselves, desperately trying to calculate their next moves, but none dared speak loudly. Every eye darted toward Jonas, who now stepped calmly into the chamber itself, no longer hiding, no longer a shadow. The guards who had been ordered to arrest him only hours ago now stepped aside without a word. No one wanted to challenge the man who had single-handedly dismantled the political order of the galaxy in a single day. Jonas walked slowly to the center of the chamber, pausing deliberately to let his presence sink in. When he spoke, his voice was measured but firm, addressing not just the council but the galaxy itself through hidden microphones that continued to transmit everything he said. He stated that Earth did not desire war, that Earth had no intention of domination, but that Earth would never again tolerate being dismissed or humiliated. He reminded them that diplomacy was not merely about treaties and words, but about respect, and that Earth's new form of diplomacy would always demand that respect, by any means necessary. Then, as if concluding a routine meeting, Jonas bowed slightly, turned, and walked calmly from the chamber. Behind him, silence hung heavy as the council struggled to process what had just happened. Their power structures lay in ruins, their alliances shattered, their reputations destroyed, all without a single shot being fired. Jonas's walk through the grand corridor was slow, deliberate, and completely unopposed. The very walls seemed to acknowledge that a new order had begun, and that Earth's envoy was now its architect. Outside the council complex, the galaxy was already reacting. On distant worlds, protests erupted as populations rose up against the leaders whose crimes had just been exposed. Fleets that had once patrolled with arrogance now scrambled to prepare for internal rebellion. And on Earth, the leaders who had sent Jonas in secret watched in stunned silence as their most daring operative achieved the impossible. They knew that Earth's status in the galaxy had changed forever. The day after the broadcast, the Galactic Council's chamber looked nothing like it had before. Where once delegates lounged in arrogance, now they sat stiffly, flanked by private security details, their faces pale, their eyes hollow from a sleepless night of emergency consultations, damage control, and begging for explanations they could not provide to their furious homeworlds. The speaker, whose grand booming voice had once dominated these halls, was now a shadow of himself, hunched and trembling. Before him, Earth's official delegation reappeared, not the ragged collection of junior diplomats who had endured the humiliation 2 days earlier, but the very same team, now greeted with quiet respect, even fear. Behind them, moving without fanfare, Jonas Hale walked calmly to stand at the center of the room. No guards moved to stop him. No snide remarks or laughter filled the air. The balance of power had shifted so dramatically that even the most militant factions of the council dared not provoke him. Earth's new envoy had arrived not as a petitioner but as a conqueror without armies, and every delegate present knew it. Jonas spoke softly at first, and yet every ear strained to catch his words. He made no pretense of apologies, offered no explanations for the events that had unfolded. He simply presented Earth's revised diplomatic proposal, a treaty of trade, defense cooperation, and mutual respect, written in language that made it clear this was not a request but a declaration of terms. The council delegates nodded quickly, some too quickly, eager to demonstrate their willingness to agree before they were named next in one of Jonas's broadcasts. The speaker formally accepted the proposal, though his voice cracked as he read the prepared words, and several times his hands trembled so violently that an aide had to steady the document. When the final signature was added, Jonas smiled, but not out of warmth. This was victory, but it was a cold, surgical victory. Every line of this treaty had been negotiated in the shadows, with leverage born not from strength but from fear. Then Jonas added something unexpected, catching every delegate off guard. He presented a personal clause, an amendment to the treaty that had not been circulated beforehand. It stated that Earth would not only be accepted as a trade partner but also serve as a senior advisor to the Council's security and intelligence operations, a position that would give Earth oversight of Council enforcement activities across every sector. The delegates froze for a heartbeat, glancing at one another in disbelief. To grant this role to Earth was unthinkable, a complete inversion of their hierarchy. But none of them dared object. The cost of refusal was too great. After a pause that seemed to last forever, the speaker signed the clause into the treaty, sealing Earth's ascendancy. A ripple of unease moved through the chamber as the reality of what had just occurred settled in. Earth, a planet dismissed and ridiculed only days ago, now sat at the very heart of galactic power. And the man responsible for this transformation stood before them without rank, medals, or title. Jonas simply adjusted his cuff, glanced around the room with a look that was neither boastful nor grateful, and nodded once, signaling the end of the meeting. But behind this cold performance lay another layer of intrigue. After the session, as delegates hurried to their quarters to issue revised orders and desperately recalibrate their diplomatic strategies, Jonas was escorted to a quiet chamber deep within the council complex. There he met a shadowy figure, a representative of Earth's own covert agencies. The figure's presence was not an accident but part of the true plan all along. The treaty, the fear, the exposure of council corruption, it was all designed not just to secure Earth's respect but to establish Earth's covert dominance over the very networks that had humiliated it. Jonas and this contact spoke quietly, reviewing intelligence gathered during the chaos, identifying weak points in the council's remaining infrastructure, and planning how Earth would exploit its new influence to ensure no future humiliation could ever occur again. Jonas understood that fear, though effective, was unstable. Fear could turn to resentment, to rebellion, to revenge. The key was to manage it carefully, to blend it with just enough cooperation and offers of protection to make the Council believe that Earth's rise served their own interests as well. It was delicate work, far more dangerous than the dramatic infiltration and exposure that had brought them to this point. But Jonas thrived on danger. He had not come here to enjoy the fruits of victory. He had come to build a foundation for a future in which Earth would never again be vulnerable. Across the galaxy, reactions to Earth's sudden ascendancy varied wildly. On worlds long oppressed by Council authority, celebrations erupted as populations took Earth's actions as proof that the mighty Council could bleed, could be humbled, could be broken. On other worlds, panic spread as governments rushed to distance themselves from the scandals that Jonas had exposed. Whole intelligence agencies scrambled to erase records, rewrite histories, and hide their own compromises before Jonas's team could discover them. But Jonas had already gathered more than they suspected, and Earth's leverage grew quietly even as these desperate efforts played out. The Council itself was no longer the unified, confident body it had once been. Instead, it became a fractured collection of factions, each one whispering with Earth's representatives in private, offering deals and concessions in the hope of securing protection or favor. Jonas orchestrated all of this with surgical precision, using the paranoia he had unleashed to ensure that no single faction could rebuild enough trust with another to oppose Earth's influence. Where before Earth had been mocked as a backwater, now it was feared as a master manipulator, a power that had redefined diplomacy itself. Throughout these tense days, Jonas remained a ghost among them, never grandstanding, never boasting. He attended meetings quietly, offered suggestions politely, and always left before the conversations turned to gossip about Earth's true capabilities. This kept the myths alive. Every delegate now wondered how much more Earth knew, how many other secrets Jonas might reveal, how far Earth's reach extended into their governments and personal lives. The truth was that Jonas had done less than they imagined, but in their fear, they overestimated him, granting him more power than he had actually taken. By the end of the week, Jonas walked once again through the council chamber, this time unaccompanied, and with no guards following him. The delegates watched him with carefully concealed dread, aware that this quiet human had changed the galactic balance forever. The speaker rose as he entered, nodding stiffly, and called him by his new official title, Senior Advisor Jonas Hale of Earth. It was a title that concealed more than it revealed, but Jonas did not correct him. He accepted the acknowledgement with a small smile, knowing full well that the real power he wielded had nothing to do with titles. The days following the treaty's ratification unfolded like a silent storm across the galaxy. No longer was Earth the subject of ridicule or amusement. It was now a name that carried a weight far beyond its modest planetary boundaries, a name whispered in meetings behind sealed doors, always followed by a wary glance toward the shadows. The Galactic Council's once boisterous sessions became rigid, formal, and filled with a tension that had never existed before. Every delegate who took the floor did so knowing that Earth's envoy was watching, and more terrifyingly, that he might already know what they were going to say before they said it. Jonas Hale sat in the very back row of the chamber now, an unassuming figure dressed plainly, without the ostentation of other envoys, but his presence eclipsed them all. Where once his appearance would have been overlooked or dismissed, now his mere silence spoke volumes, an unspoken reminder that Earth's shadow stretched across every star system represented in that chamber. From his seat, Jonas observed carefully. He had achieved Earth's elevation to power, but he understood that fear alone would not sustain it. Fear decays, transforms, breeds resentment and rebellion if not managed properly. His mission was no longer simply about enforcing respect for Earth but about ensuring that this fragile balance of power would endure. The Council, fractured and paranoid, would need constant management. Allies would have to be rewarded just enough to keep them loyal, rivals manipulated just enough to keep them divided. Jonas had built this new order with precision, and now he would maintain it with equal care. In private, Jonas conducted meetings with factions who had only days before dismissed Earth as irrelevant. The Scar Dominion's envoys requested private consultations, seeking to align their interests with Earth's newly granted role in Council security. The Vrextii delegation offered rare mineral rights in exchange for discreet protection from internal rebellions now sparked by the revelations Jonas had exposed. The Ulthari, terrified that further scandals would emerge, provided their most valuable intelligence network as a gesture of goodwill. Jonas accepted every offer with measured politeness, noting the desperation behind every smiling face and generous gift. These deals, crafted in haste and fear, became the foundation of Earth's growing influence. Jonas did not simply collect these concessions as trophies. He wove them into a complex web of obligations, debts, and promises that made Earth indispensable to the Council's survival. Beyond the Council chamber, the galaxy itself reacted with a mixture of awe and unease. Media broadcasts on countless worlds replayed the footage of Jonas's broadcast, the moment Earth's envoy had calmly dismantled the Council's illusion of control. Entire populations began viewing Earth not just as an upstart world but as a symbol of disruption, of defiance against entrenched power. Some revered Earth as a champion of the powerless. Others feared it as a dangerous wildcard that could no longer be ignored. Either way, Earth had become a central character in the story of the galaxy's future. But Jonas was not finished. As he reviewed intelligence reports in the privacy of his quarters, his mind was already several steps ahead. He knew that the Council's fear would eventually stabilize, that the delegates would find ways to rationalize their humiliation, to convince themselves that Earth's rise was a fluke or a temporary imbalance. He had to ensure that Earth remained not just respected but absolutely essential. To achieve this, he initiated a new phase of his operation, one designed not to humiliate or blackmail but to embed Earth's interests so deeply into the fabric of galactic governance that no decision could be made without consulting an Earth representative. He began by offering expertise in Council security reforms, positioning Earth as the indispensable architect of a safer, more transparent Council infrastructure. Under the guise of helpfulness, Earth's advisors would help design new surveillance networks, restructured intelligence protocols, and advanced encryption systems, all subtly engineered to ensure Earth retained privileged access and control. Delegates, still shaken by the chaos Jonas had orchestrated, eagerly accepted this help, believing that Earth's involvement would prevent another crisis. In doing so, they unwittingly granted Earth a permanent position at the heart of their governance. Even as he cultivated this cooperation, Jonas was careful to maintain the myth of Earth's mysterious capabilities. He allowed whispers of Earth's covert technologies and unmatched intelligence operations to persist, knowing that the power of suggestion was often more effective than brute force. No one could verify exactly what Earth could do, and that uncertainty was itself a form of control. Delegates who might have considered opposing Earth hesitated, always wondering if Jonas already had leverage over them, or if another revelation was waiting to destroy their careers. The myth fed itself, growing larger with every careful maneuver Jonas made. Within weeks, Earth's diplomatic presence expanded dramatically. What began as a single envoy's covert mission had blossomed into an entire diplomatic corps embedded at every level of council operations. Earth's advisors sat on key committees, Earth's intelligence officers quietly reviewed security clearances, and Earth's analysts provided critical insights that no one dared question. In a matter of days, Earth transitioned from an outsider to the indispensable backbone of galactic governance, all without firing a single shot or deploying a single fleet. Jonas reflected on the irony of it all. He had not come here with warships or armies, but with information, psychology, and precision. He had taken a laughingstock of a planet and turned it into a feared and respected superpower through nothing more than carefully applied pressure, manipulation, and timing. The very delegates who had once mocked Earth now depended on it for their political survival, and every concession they had made to Earth's authority was voluntary, offered willingly out of fear, desperation, or opportunism. Late one night, as Jonas reviewed the latest intelligence briefings in his quarters, a secure message arrived. It was from an unknown faction, a shadowy power not formally represented on the Council, proposing an alliance that would go beyond mere trade or cooperation. They offered to help Earth reshape the entire structure of galactic governance, to overthrow what remained of the old Council entirely, and replace it with a new order, one built around Earth's principles and influence. Jonas read the message carefully, weighing its implications. He understood that accepting such an offer would take Earth from feared power to absolute ruler, but it would also expose Earth to new risks and threats, challenges far greater than those he had just overcome. As he stared at the blinking cursor awaiting his response, Jonas smiled faintly. He knew that Earth's rise was far from complete, and that the path forward would demand even greater cunning, patience, and ruthlessness. But he also knew that the galaxy had learned a critical lesson, one that would not be forgotten for generations. Earth's diplomats no longer arrived hat in hand, begging for acceptance. They arrived as shadows, as strategists, as architects of a new era.